Ever start a project, with the best intentions, only for it to kind of go sideways in ways you never even, imagined?
Happens to the best of us.
Well, today, we're going deep on those huge GE undertakings, mega projects. We're talking massive engineering feats that, well, they promised a lot, but let's just say they hit a few bumps along the way. Abandoned airports, deserted cities, even a highway so scenic, it's actually kind of dangerous.
It's a fascinating look at what happens when big dreams meet reality, right? We'll be picking apart why these projects went off the rails, bad planning, shifting politics, the works. And who knows, maybe we'll even find a hidden gem or two among these billion-dollar blunders.
Okay, so first up, we're heading to Hawaii. Picture this lush mountains, turquoise ocean, and slicing right through it all. A ribbon of asphalt known as Interstate H3.
Ah, beautiful image, but with a really complicated history. Back in the 1960s, during the Cold War, the H3, it was supposed to be this vital route connecting military bases on Oahu.
Back when everyone was worried about bomb shelters and
Yeah.
things change, right?
Exactly. It was a whole different world. Fast forward through decades of, environmental concerns, legal battles, rerouting to protect the ecosystem. The whole 9 yards of the project ended up with a hefty price tag, $1.3 billion, for just 16 miles of road.
Wait, hold on. Did you say $1.3 billion for 16 miles?
Yeah.
That's a whole lot of zeros for a short drive.
To put it mildly, it's actually the most expensive road per mile, ever built. And get this, by the time it finally opened in 1997, those Cold War defense concerns, totally irrelevant by then. Plus, lots of Native Hawaiians, they see it as this desecration of sacred land.
Talk about a scenic route to nowhere. So we've got a crazy expensive highway that's stunningly beautiful, but also completely unnecessary. Have you ever started a project only to realize halfway through that you didn't even need it anymore? This is like that feeling times 1,000.
It really shows how important it is to adapt, especially with these long-term projects. What seems essential one day, totally useless the next.
Speaking of ambitious plans going off the rails, let's hop over to Spain. Picture this massive airport, one of the longest runways in Europe, built to rival Madrid. Sounds good, right? Except for one teensy problem.
Ciudad Real Central Airport. It's like the definition of a good idea on paper, but in reality, it had the design, the capacity, everything, except the right location.
Let me guess they built it in the middle of nowhere and just hoped people would come.
It wasn't nowhere, but pretty close, over 100 miles from Madrid, so super inconvenient. And then the 2008 financial crisis hit.
Oof, bad timing.
The company behind it, they went bankrupt. So there it was, this billion-dollar airport got completely deserted.
What happens to a ghost airport? Just tumbleweeds rolling through.
It became a tourist attraction, actually. They even used those abandoned runways for Top Gear, a billion-dollar backdrop for car stunts.
Wow. From a highway to nowhere to an airport racetrack. These mega projects are full of surprises. But our next stop, we're getting even more ambitious. City building. You ever play SimCity? Imagine designing a whole capital from scratch. Shiny new buildings, huge avenues, the works. That's what they tried to do in Myanmar with Naypyidaw.
Talk about ambitious. This was back in 2002. The leaders, they wanted a symbol of modernity, so they spared no expense. They even put in a 20-lane highway.
Hold up, 20 lanes. Even my wildest SimCity dreams weren't that big. It sounds impressive, but I'm guessing there's got to be a catch.
You're right. Despite the billions poured into this city, Naypyidaw is pretty much empty. They call it a ghost capital.
They built this super modern city, and nobody moved in. That's got to be awkward. What happened?
They miss the human element. You can build these fancy buildings, these huge roads, but you gotta have that social stuff too.
So they built the stage, but forgot the whole play, huh?
Exactly. That sense of community, those businesses, the schools, the healthcare. It's not just about concrete.
It's about what makes people actually want to live there. Did they think this new city would just wipe away all those other challenges? It's like they forgot that progress isn't just about buildings. It's about people.
Couldn't have put it better myself.
Okay.
Ready for a change of scenery? From a ghost city, we're going to a futuristic utopia. At least that was the idea behind Forest City in Malaysia.
Okay, eco-paradise, let's go. Sustainable, prime location. What could go wrong?
This one, it's complicated. Forest City, they had the greenery, the tech. They were right by a major port, but they ran into some, shall we say, political speed bumps.
Oh boy, here we go.
So it was heavily funded by China and marketed that way too, mostly to Chinese investors. High prices, right? So Malaysians, they felt excluded.
Not very harmonious with nature, is it? They forgot the people again. Did Forest City ever recover?
Then the pandemic hit, just to add insult to injury. Travel restrictions, the economy. The city's pretty deserted now, a far cry from utopia.
It's like something out of a sci-fi book. The dangers of forgetting the human side of progress. What happens when these big dreams meet the real world, you know?
And speaking of real-world problems, our last stop is a potential wasteland, Yucca Mountain, Nevada. This was supposed to be the place for America's nuclear waste.
Okay, that's a whole other level of complexity. We're talking dangerous stuff, got to be stored for like centuries. You can't just build a bigger trash can. What was the plan?
Yucca Mountain was going to be this deep underground storage site, tunnels, the whole shebang, far away from people, far from water. Made sense on paper, right? Safe and contained.
I'm waiting for the but.
But, and it's a big but, nobody wants nuclear waste as a neighbor.
Can't say I blame them.
Even if it's buried deep in a mountain in the middle of the desert, there was massive pushback from Nevadans, from politicians.
So they wanted to build this thing, this massive project, but the people who lived there were like, absolutely not. What did they do?
The project, it stalled. You had lawsuits, political battles, people were protesting.
Sounds messy.
It was a mess. Billions of dollars already spent, and then the Obama administration, they finally said stop. So now the U.S. has all this nuclear waste and no permanent solution.
So we're just sitting on a radioactive time bomb. That's not comforting.
It's a huge challenge. Right now, it's all in these temporary storage sites scattered around the country. Not ideal. It shows how we need more than just, engineering solutions. We got to figure out the social side, the ethical side. It's complicated.
It's like all these mega projects, right? They look great on paper, but then you forget about the people involved, whether it's lack of community support or politics getting in the way or just not adapting to how the world changes.
Yeah.
The human element, it always messes things up.
Exactly. We can't just think big. We got to think smart, consider all the angles.
So as we wrap up our deep dive into these ambitious but maybe not so successful mega projects, what's the one thing you hope people take away from all of this?
I'd say, progress. It's rarely a straight line. It's messy. There are detours. Sometimes you learn more from the projects that don't work out.
It's about learning from the mistakes, right? Ambition is great, but got to have some foresight too.
Couldn't have said it better myself.
Well, that's all the time we have for today's deep dive. We went from a scenic highway to a deserted city, a utopian dream to a nuclear wasteland. These mega projects, they definitely make you think, huh? Let us know what stood out to you. Maybe we'll revisit one of these stories another time. Until then, keep exploring, keep asking questions, and most importantly, keep learning.